Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. No, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
Trey Reeves, we have arrived at the championship contenders for the ACC here on the Three Technique, the college football podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes. That is Trey Reeves. I'm Mitch Mason. Glad to have you back with us to round out ACC preview week, to round out our conference previews, Trey. This is the final episode. We've got Notre Dame and Oregon State, Washington State, UConn as well, the independents to come. But we've gone through all of the conferences and the FBS level of college football. We have recorded, I don't even know how many hours worth of podcasts, dozens of episodes. We have written literally, I think, 50,000, no, way more than that, probably hundreds of thousands of words, because I wrote 10,000 words just the other day. It's been a lot. It's been an absolute grind, 3 episodes a week for the last couple of months. But this is kind of like the graduation ceremony, I feel like, almost. Like we've made it through the slog of preview season, my friend.
We have, and we, of course, have some really fun episodes on tap after we do the Independence Impact 2. I'm really excited about some of those ideas that we've been kind of noshing on throughout the rest of the summer. But yeah, it feels great. I got to say, it does feel really good to be finishing up these last 5 teams in the ACC. Some interesting storylines here, to be sure. I'm excited to talk about them, but I'm way more excited to kind of work out my wrists a little bit, maybe get rid of some of that carpal tunnel that's developed. And yeah, just get ready for actual games on the field and get done with talking season.
Yeah, touch some grass, soak in some sun. That would be
Go on a
delightful.
date with our wives. What's that like? I don't know.
I know. It's funny. My wife, we talk about all the time that we've spent during the summer, and she's got a side hustle as well that she works on, and so we try and make it as date-like as possible, as romantic as possible, sitting on the couch together, working on our projects, and that's how we spend some time together. But yeah, I think a dinner night out would be good. You said it would be fantastic to. It's been fantastic to nosh on some of these teams. How about noshing on Tommy Castellanos, a man who has evidently undergone a name change? I was not aware that he was going by Tommy now, but he is across all the national databases. So tell me, my friend, about Florida State, and how on earth, after 2-10, did they end up in the top 5 of the conference?
I guess our listeners are really excited about Tommy Boy, because this feels like a situation where we're maybe just banking on the name. 2-10 is just still wild to think about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like how they had to bottom out. I know we were concerned about some of the portal decisions that they made. We were concerned about some of the losses last year, especially on the defensive line. But we never saw 2-10 coming. We never saw that fall from grace from going 13-0 the previous season. So yeah, I don't know how they're back up in the top 5. I would not have personally put them in my top 5, but as we like to say, we will, when you look at the Jimmies and Joes, they will have better Jimmies and Joes than quite a few other teams on the schedule. So I guess we can start there. Yeah, Tommy Castellanos, name change and all, coming down to Tallahassee, talking a lot of trash, even to Alabama. And that's been a choice. I would point him to the record of the team that he's joining from last year and maybe say that he should chill out with that just a little bit. But he's going to try to right the ship. I'm not excited about that. I'll just be straight up honest. And I don't want to turn this into just a total bash Florida State session. Your fans have been through enough. If you're a Seminole fan watching this, I promise we'll get to some positives here in just a second, because I do have some positives for your team this year. And I think there are things to look forward to, but I am not excited about this quarterback decision. It's a second straight year. I don't know if it's just we can't find the money. Maybe the booster support is dried up for Mike Norvell. to find a quarterback, and they're kind of just wanting him to exit stage right. Whatever it is, I'm just really don't have a lot of enthusiasm about the portal selection at quarterback for the second straight year.
It does feel a little bit like a Moneyball strategy, but you know that there are no corners being cut. There's no budget that's being saved by getting DJ Uiagalelei last year and Tommy Castellanos this year. I do think last year, quite frankly, there wasn't a world where that portal addition made any sense to me. We kind of DJU was who we thought he was, and it just wasn't going to be the X factor that was going to get FSU to championship contention. Castellanos at least fits what Gus Malzahn wants to do on offense. If you're just kind of realizing Gus Malzahn is now the offensive coordinator at Florida State, left UCF, just kind of gave up the head coaching job, did resign. So he saved UCF a bunch of money by doing that, which was a nice, I guess, redemptive arc on his way out of town. But he basically decided that he didn't want to be a head coach anymore in the modern college football, and he just wanted to go be an offensive coordinator. Goes down the road to Tallahassee, and when you look back at what Malzahn has succeeded with, it is dual threat quarterbacks, but I don't know if Castellanos is the guy that can throw well enough to be the quarterback that's going to flourish in Malzahn's system. That's going to be something I think we discover this year together. 2 years ago, he was a run-first quarterback. If he was throwing the ball, it was probably going to the other team or falling incomplete. He was not the poster boy for efficiency. Last year, despite getting benched up in Boston College, he actually improved quite noticeably across a bunch of key metrics. And so I think there is some positives. There are reasons to like Castellanos in this offense, but we've never seen him be a guy that I would have thought, okay, that's the quarterback that a team a piece away would love to have. And you plug him in and suddenly it's conference championship, playoff, etc. That's where I feel like I'm wrestling with as the identity of the offense seems to center around Castellanos, the mobility, and throwing off of that athleticism.
It's almost like Mike Norvell saw him come into Doak Campbell last year and beat them and just said, hey, that's my guy. That's a gamer. In week one, it was the second game for Florida State, but it was week one of the season. And just the rest of the season was hell-bent on getting him to Tallahassee. That's all. I know that's probably not how it went down, but that's just what it feels like.
Yeah.
I guess transitioning to the other pieces around him, Roydell Williams is going to come back from injury. They were really banking on him to be a big piece of that offense last year. And then when he went down, the run game kind of went with him. They brought in Squirrel White from Tennessee. That's going to be a dynamic receiving option. He can get loose. He has that name for a reason. Gavin Blackwell from North Carolina, Deuce Robinson from UCF. They're kind of rebuilding
USC.
The receiving cores. Randy Pittman is an interesting tight end pickup from UCF as well. I'm worried about the offensive line because it was one of the worst in Florida State history last year. They gave up 49 sacks. Gave DJU and everybody else that was playing quarterback last year just no time to do anything. They're going to have a completely new starting lineup, it looks like, potentially. 4 sitting starters from the FBS, a starter from Harvard as well. It's going to take some time to gel, and I'm worried that that's going to just be another year, another situation where they're bringing guys in hoping they can gel, and if it gets off to a rough start, there's going to be a lot of grumbling very quickly.
Yeah, they need Gavin Sawchuk to step up in the running game as well. He joined, I believe, in the spring portal. So, it's probably going to be running back by committee, but they have to have that. Florida State, when they're great, they have a very, very good ground attack. And I need to see them return to that. Last year, 128th in rushing. They were 130th in scoring, 132nd in total offense. So Florida State fans, the good news is you can't be much worse than what you were last year. It was just sad to watch that Seminoles team try and play offense. I don't know, Trey, if the offseason kind of washes away the sins of maybe some past social media bets, some wagers that were not paid off, something to do with the Red Solo Cup. I don't know where we stand as far as college football karma when it comes to that, but I'll flip it over to the defense as you chuckle away. I do actually like the defense and some of their starting points, specifically the defensive line. They bring in Tony White from Nebraska. Terrence Knighton came with him. 2 big losses to the Cornhusker staff that we highlighted when we previewed Nebraska. And then they get guys like Elijah Herring who come over from Memphis to join the linebacking core. I can talk myself into the pieces around a guy like Amar Graham Jr., who's coming back in that linebacking unit. I can talk myself into some of the talent that they have on the back end of the secondary. But I joked on Twitter, I have them squarely in the could win the league, could miss a bowl game category. And that's a category of 1 in the ACC. Like, Florida State to me has such a wide variety of outcomes where if the Mike Norvell portal plan pays off, sure, like 9-3, 10-2, playing in the ACC title game wouldn't shock me. Do I expect it? No, but wouldn't shock me because that's what this Florida State team and program I think is capable of doing. The best of Tommy Castellanos is probably going to be hell on wheels for a lot of defensive coordinators in the league. I could also see them missing the postseason again because when you bring in this many new puzzle pieces, sometimes, Trey, you don't get all the corner pieces. Sometimes you lose some of those middle pieces in the shuffle. And like I did two Christmases ago with my in-laws, you spend hours putting together thousands of pieces of puzzles. And then lo and behold, you figure out there's 2 pieces missing in the dead center, and they're nowhere to be found. That's what it felt like Florida State was last year, just missing pieces all over the place.
Spot on. And that's what's been so, I think, frustrating to watch Florida State go through because you know that they're in a recruiting hotbed. You know that they have the resources to go get top 10, top 5 high school recruiting classes and backfill those positions with talent. They are not a program that needs to build through the portal yet. Mike Norvell has chosen to do that. It's paid off great at times. Their 2023 squad was largely built through the portal. But when you live by the portal, you're also going to die by the portal. And that's exactly what happened last year. They didn't get the right evaluations. They missed at key spots, quarterback, defensive line, the most important spots on the team they were missing. So, yeah, it's just really fascinating to watch a program, the caliber of Florida State, what Bobby Bowden and Jimbo Fisher built it up into, try to be an Ole Miss or I don't want to slander anybody, but you know the teams that typically build through the portal and have not been relying on high school recruiting. That's still the bedrock of this game, and building the best way to build talent consistently is through that high school recruiting. They just haven't done it. I mean, going back all the way to the Twitter space that we all love to sneak in on when they lost Travis Hunter to Jackson State a few years ago. It's just always been a bugaboo, right? Back to this year, though, I'm a little, you said you're high on the defensive line. The only thing I'm worried about, I know they got James Williams from Nebraska, and I'm not really talking about him here. They're relying on some other pieces from smaller schools. They got a guy from Coastal, I think, a guy from Western Kentucky. Both of them put up great numbers at those schools. But anytime that we're relying on guys in the trenches from smaller schools, particularly Conference USA, I get a little uneasy. Yes, I know Jared Verse came from Albany, and he's maybe the best defensive lineman this generation, definitely from Florida State. But that's just something I always worried about, something I circle and maybe come back to if it doesn't live up to expectations. But overall, it seems like the coaching staff is confident in their portal additions on defense. They've made a lot. And from the depth charts I've seen, I mean, they bring their top 2 tacklers back, but both of them are listed as backups behind some of these new transfers. So it seems like the coaching staff is really confident in these guys that they're going to be trotting out on the field, and it can only go up, especially in the pass, in the run defense, because it was really bad last year. They were good against the pass, but really bad against the run last year.
Yeah, they sure were. Deontay McCray is the guy from Western Kentucky. I'm excited to see what he looks like in this FSU system, because at times in Conference USA, it felt like a man amongst boys. And so coming up a level in competition, and we'll get to their schedule in just a second, it's going to be a nice step up in competition, right? He's going to be playing some big old boys along that offensive line. The one thing, back to your transfer portal point for just 1 second, the thing that has convinced me and my college football financial advisor to keep Knowles Coin out of my portfolio for 2025 is that evaluation snafu that Norvell just seems to have. the guy cannot evaluate a quarterback. He cannot get a quarterback worth his salt to Tallahassee. Just go look at the attempts that he's made to secure high school commits, and he might get a guy in the boat verbally, never makes it to campus, ends up flipping, ends up transferring out if, for the guys that they do get to campus. I don't believe there's a single quarterback on the roster currently. Hyperbole, he doesn't have any sort of stockpile of talent that he's actually brought to Tallahassee from the high school ranks. It's concerning. It's concerning. The blue chips have just not been there. They've not wanted. When they have gotten in action, it's not been good. It's not been good. The backup situation has been abysmal at Florida State. So I'm on pause with Florida State as far as me buying and selling, really doing anything. I'm just going to be a casual observer this year. I do think that they could get to 6, 7, 8 wins. And like I said, if everything clicks, sure, let's talk ACC title game. Boy, you're going to have to me. That schedule starts early. Alabama, week 1. They host them. Then Alabama at home, but I think the betting markets already have this as a double-digit game favorite tie. Last I saw, it was 12 or 13 points. It honestly wouldn't shock me if this were up towards the 17-point stratosphere by the kickoff. I just don't know that after this offseason and given what we know about Alabama and Ryan Grubb coming to the Crimson Tide, that offense looking it's going to be all systems go health-wise. I just don't really know how Florida State's going to stack up against the Tide, not without seeing them on the field first.
I know how they're going to stack up. I don't think it's going to be pretty. And I think that Castellanos running his mouth is going to be a really big problem for him. He's writing checks that his play and his teammates will not be able to cash. Could be a weird. I mean, I know Lance Barton of Always Talking Ball was really nervous about this game as an Alabama fan, but I just don't know. Other than just some PTSD on his end, where that's coming from. After that, they get East Texas A&M and Kent State. Those should be wins. Then you have a tricky Virginia squad on the road. You host Miami, Pitt at home, at Stanford. That's a really tricky. There's not a game. There's not a Power 4 game in that opening stretch there that there's not some weird wrinkle to, right? Even Stanford, they're going all the way across the country and crossing 3 time zones to get to that game. So getting started, I think we're starting 0-1. However many they can win, in addition to East Texas A&M and Kent State, however many they win of those next 4 is really going to determine how this season goes. Because if they go 1-3 in those next 4, which I don't think is out of the question, especially if they go 0-3 against Virginia, Miami, and Pitt back-to-back, Norvell's probably gone after that Stanford game going into the bye week, or he's at very least a dead man walking the rest of the year, and it's really hard to find motivation for everybody once again.
Yeah. I'm certainly not rooting against Florida State, but boy, if it does go sideways, I wonder how quickly the circus comes to town and Florida State has to do to figure that out. Norvell's got it took a reduction in pay. Was that this year or last year?
It was after last year because he did not take the reduction after being right on the cusp of the playoff. He got the extension, I believe, if I'm remembering right. He got an extension after that, and then backtracked.
Said, "Oh wait, actually, I'll give that back to you. I appreciate the gesture. That's too kind of you. Allow me to return the favor." Yeah, Florida State, interesting football team this year. Could click, could fall apart, probably somewhere in between. Let's talk about the SMU Mustangs. Come back closer to home. Rhett Lashley has built a phenomenal program. He's the Mustangs competing for ACC titles, going to the college football playoff, things trending in the right direction. And SMU is recruiting like a big boy program right now, like a program that has intents on winning the national championship. A lot to go between now and then, but it's hard to SMU and not go stock up overall. Now, that being said, a lot of transition this year SMU built up to last year's team that had a super high ceiling of going to the playoff and playing for an ACC championship because they recruited so well and they had so many big bodies in the trenches, the offensive line, the defensive line. This year, they're replacing a lot of that production, specifically on the defensive side. You lose Rashard Smith, who was your offense last year. He did a little bit of everything for you in the pass game, obviously running the football as well, converted wide receiver. So I look at SMU, and I certainly have high hopes for the team. We'd better, right? We're season ticket holders. But I do wonder if maybe that magical run, maybe we hit pause. Maybe we regress a little bit towards the mean this year and then get ready to consolidate. It's like a stock chart, man. You can't go parabolic forever. Sometimes you've got to consolidate, you've got to come back, and then you load up for another big time run in the next year or two.
It was kind of a perfect storm last year. We highlighted the easiness of their schedule, right? They avoided Clemson. They avoided Miami last year on the ACC portion of the schedule. Won some close games at Louisville, snuck out of Duke with a win as well. So there definitely is some potential for regression to the mean, but I think they're still going to be right there up contending for a conference title this year. They might not make it back to Charlotte, but they're going to be in the conversation very late in the year. Kevin Jennings gets to be the dude all offseason. We talked about that with a couple other guys throughout this previous season. I think it's invaluable, the amount of reps that he's going to get and how they will know for sure that he is a starter going into this year. I think that's huge. And I think he has the skill set to back that up. I know the last taste we got of him in that Ice Bowl against Penn State was not pretty, but if you never got to watch Kevin Jennings outside of that game, do yourself a favor and tune in early this season. He gets to play against some fun matchups. We'll talk about the schedule in a minute. And yeah, he's a gamer that game does not represent the best of Kevin Jennings. And I'm excited to see what he can do with a full offseason of prep. Biggest question for me, you hinted at it with Smith being gone. Who takes over as RB1? Is it going to be a committee? I think it likely will be. They got TJ Harden from UCLA. But from what I've heard, they're also really high on Derek McFall, a kid that got a little bit of play last year as a true freshman. He started getting some reps at the end of the season, getting snuck into a few games. But they're really excited in the building, it seems like, for him to take the next step and be a big contributor on this offense this year. And they got a big boost when their best weapon on offense decided to come back for another year in RJ Maryland. That's a tight end that's just a matchup problem, a nightmare, honestly. No matter where they line him up in line on the line, they put him out wide, they put him in the slot, and he just causes a lot of problems no matter who's trying to cover him. So they've got some weapons coming back. This is an offense that doesn't really rely on a true wide receiver one. They spread it out a ton. And it's going to be a bunch of guys that get 400 or 500 yards receiving rather than one guy that gets 1,200 or something like that. So I think they've got some dudes that can fill those roles, backfill from the guys that they lost. I'm really not worried about the offense at all this year, to be honest, but you mentioned it. You teased it off the top. The pass rush has been great and maybe the strength of this team the last couple of years, and I'm a little worried where that production is going to be coming from.
Yeah, it's the defensive line that gives me my concern, and I think there's talented pieces, but I just wonder if they're going to get up to speed as quickly as they did the last 2 seasons, honestly, because boy, they had veteran after veteran from Miami that came over. I mean, that was really the Miami Mustangs along the defensive line. This year, I like the linebackers. It's a younger linebacking core. Alexander Kilgore was one of their big recruiting wins a couple of years ago. He's back. Brandon Booker, local kids from South Oak Cliff, he's back. Zakai Barker is back as well. In the secondary, remember Deuce Harmon, a guy that we were so high on in Aggie land and then kind of accused him of being slow and not understanding how to play coverage. He really could be one of the better defensive backs in the ACC this year. The growth that he has had since coming to Dallas has made me very, very happy. But yeah, it's a couple of new pieces, specifically up front, that I'm not out on SMU. I'm not discouraging the Mustangs by any stretch of the imagination. Will actively be rooting for them this year. But objectively, as you talk to experts around the state of Texas and folks that cover the ACC, that is going to be, I think, the universal question mark that comes up when you preview the Ponies.
Yeah, and I think they do have some guys that could fill those roles, right? Like Isaiah Smith is back, Cameron Robertson is back. But again, like I mentioned with a couple teams on the last episode, specifically, I think within the receiving core, those are two dudes that were part of a bigger group that was contributing, and now they need to step up and be the guy. They've combined for 10.5 sacks last year. That's great. But it's a little bit of the supporting cast is gone this year, and they're going to have to step up and do it more by themselves. I also love Isaiah Wokobia in the secondary. Just want to shout him out real quick before we move on to schedule. That's a star player, man. Amazing safety, amazing piece to have there at the back end. He was first team All ACC last year, kind of quietly, but he's in for a big year this year, I think.
Talk to me about the schedule, because it does get started with a couple of warm-up games around Baylor and TCU, your two biggest in-state rivals. You've got East Texas A&M and Missouri State, the newcomer, obviously, to Conference USA. But Baylor's at home. TCU is on the road. It's the last iron skillet game for at least the foreseeable future. It's a Baylor team that very well could go off and win the Big 12. I feel like we learned very quickly maybe the ceiling that SMU has compared to their peers when they take on the Bears and in the Horned Frogs. And then the schedule this year in the ACC, they've got some tricky road games, right? They missed Clemson last year. They have to go to Death Valley this year. They host Syracuse. We talked about Syracuse. I think we both really like the Orange sans their schedule. And so getting them in Dallas, probably an advantage for SMU, but that's also a tricky team, right? I mean, that's Fran Brown says that SMU has to play Syracuse, not the other way around. They've got Miami that comes to town. They've got Louisville that comes to town. Clemson, I guess, is the only road game that scares me, but it's some big boys that come to Dallas for sure.
Yeah, it's weird. Going to the conference schedule real quick, and we'll jump back to the non-conference because there's some weird quirks there that I want to talk about. But they don't really play a lot of the middle teams, right? Syracuse, right. I guess you could say, is a middle team. I know we talked about Louisville on the last episode. If I was making the rankings, I would have them on this episode. But they either play the top or the projected bottom from a team standpoint. So it's going to be really interesting how those games shake out. Got to make your hay against the teams that are projected at the bottom and try to pick off a couple against the teams at the top. Not going to pick them to go into Death Valley and get a win, but they could definitely knock off a Miami at home. They could definitely rattle a Miller Moss-led offense with the pass rush and knock off Louisville at home. So, yeah, it's a schedule that has some good resume building opportunities if you're looking for them to get back to the playoff, and also some opportunities to build wins against the lower half of the league. Jumping back to the non-conference portion, though, that Baylor game is going to be so crucial for both of those teams. SMU is going to be 1-0. Baylor might be 0-1 and a little desperate if they lose that opener to Auburn that they have at home. Baylor's going to come into that game really desperate and needing a win. We saw SMU take on a Big 12 foe last year in BYU. Didn't go well at home. So it's going to be a very pivotal game for both of the teams. At Missouri State is so interesting that they're going to Springfield. It's going to be the first game as first home game as a member of the FBS for the Bears. I'm not going to pick Missouri State to win that game. It's just a weird spot, especially right before the last Iron Skillet game. All the distractions, and you're going to their house where they're going to be fired up to play. I don't know if they've ever hosted a team the caliber of SMU in Springfield. So it might be the biggest home game in the history of that program. And you're playing it right before the last time you're playing your most bitter rival. So classic track game scenario that they're going to have to deal with there.
Where do you have SMU landing record-wise? I think you could certainly paint a picture that if everything clicks again, why couldn't we get back to Charlotte given this schedule? Maybe you drop a game or two. Schedule maybe has to work your way. You don't necessarily control your destiny, but stranger things have happened in this thing called college football. I could also see maybe taking a step back and going 8-4, but I don't necessarily know that SMU drops much below that.
I think the offense is good enough to get them to 9-3. When I look at the schedule, I think they'll probably go 3-1 in the non-conference portion. I don't know which one they lose, but I think they will split Baylor and TCU. I just don't think I'm confident to pick them to go 2-0 in 2 rivalry games. They're going to be really heated. So I think they'll go 3-1 in non-conference. I think there's some opportunities to build momentum before they go into Clemson with Syracuse and Stanford. I think they'll be 5-1 there. Probably lose to Clemson, and then split Louisville and Miami as the other big marquee home games to end the season. I think that's 9-3. I think that's a great season for Rhett Lashley and kind of a transition year on the defensive side of the ball, and another opportunity to win 10 games. You'll always take that as you're trying to get your footing still in the ACC.
Right. Yeah, baby. I'm excited about it. I know our friends in Mustang Mood are very excited about it. If SMU looking to pony up content, great place to start. Some fantastic guys, and I'm sure we're going to see them in the press box at Ford Stadium as well this year. Let's talk one of our absolute darlings. Year in and year out, at least Garrett and I have rooted for them. Be a little bit of a slow adopter, but you're officially on the radar in the graphic. I'm talking about the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets.
I want to say thank you so much. I'm no longer getting run over by the rambling wreck on the graphic. I saw that on Twitter the other day, and I do need to give you your flowers for that. I've never been anti-Georgia Tech, to be clear. I've been anti their schedule and how the ACC has just tried to make them go 3-9 every single year. And they keep coming back. So shout out Georgia Tech. I love you. I've never hated you. I've just hated your schedule.
That's very fair. Schedule this year might they might have enough of a favorable look. It's not an easy schedule by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not like doomsday worthy, which feels like a major win for the folks in Atlanta. I love this offense. I think that there are a lot of pieces all over the place to like. Obviously, you're going to have some transition, and you lose your leading wide receiver to Auburn last year, but you bring him right back, a replacement in Eric Rivers from FIU. You actually get Dean Patterson, I believe, also from FIU. The top 2 Panther receivers come to town. Malik Rutherford is back. They've got a couple of starters along the offensive line. Jamal Haynes is back. Haynes King should be healthy, we hope. I mean, it was duct tape and baling wire that held him together last year. I love Georgia Tech this year, man. I'm excited to see if they can make it to the playoff.
And this is an offense that has an identity and is not afraid to stick to it, right? We heard that week 0
from
ball. Brent Key in Arlington. Run the ball, right? With that hard W in there. You mentioned the law offices of Haynes and Haynes. I had to get my shout out to them in there. They're still open. They're still helping people with some injuries eventually, but right now they're just wrecking shop on the offensive side of the ball. And I think, you mentioned Haynes King needing to be held together. They also have Aaron Filio, right? How do you say his last name?
Backup
quarterback?
The backup quarterback, yes.
Is it Filio?
I don't think that's how you pronounce his name. I'll get that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and but he came in and had some good moments last year too, and I think they could use him in some gadget opportunities. So I'm excited about that. You mentioned Eric Rivers. That's a huge addition. They also bring back Malik Rutherford from last year, who had a nice season behind as the number 2 receiver. I'm a little worried about the offensive line. They lost some guys. They're retooling that just a little bit, but I think I trust the staff to get that right. I guess the only thing that could keep them from making a run to, across the street in Atlanta or that up to Charlotte, right? I almost said Atlanta for the SEC, but we're talking about the ACC, Charlotte.
Sure.
Only potential roadblock there I see is just this transition on defense. They lose Tyler Santucci, who was a fantastic defensive coordinator. Blake Gideon is the new defensive coordinator. He was a safety coach at Texas last year, Mitch.
Yes.
This is not fair to Blake. I think he's a great coach. I will always remember him, though, for his demise and the last drive in Lubbock in 2008 that gave one of the most iconic moments in college football history. You'll remember him falling down on the catch from Michael Crabtree. Like, that's him that kind of just gets completely out of the play there and allows Crabtree to score. He also dropped a pick that was right in his breadbasket earlier in that drive that people forget about. But I digress. He's now a coach. He's doing great things. I think it's his first time being a defensive coordinator that I'm aware of. So that's a big transition. But yeah, I think that's the only thing I'm worried about holding Georgia Tech back. Can they keep that same identity and that same intensity on the defensive side of the ball?
If they play with the same intensity that you just issued to the drive-by of Blake Gideon, then they're gonna be fine.
I had to do it, man. Like he torched A&M. He was really good against A&M this whole time.
He was great safety. Very
I gotta
good
take
safety.
my shots at the one low point of his career, truly.
Man, the whole household, we were in Beavers Bend, Oklahoma watching that game, and the whole household screamed when that ball hit Gideon between the numbers, and then of course it falls to the turf, and the rest is history. I'm definitely drinking the Kool-Aid. Like I am incapable, I think, of being unbiased towards Georgia Tech right now, because I've rooted for this team when it was not sexy to do so. When Haynes King went there and it was like, well, okay, sure, that's where he plays football now. But they have found a brand, and they have instilled a culture in a place that should be easy to win in urban Atlanta, and just frankly is not. Even recruiting their own neighborhoods has been difficult for Georgia Tech over these last couple of years. But Brent Key has that tie to the program, right? Former offensive lineman, comes in, knows how to run the show, knows how to connect with the students, with the alumni. And now I really feel like this might be the crowning of the Yellow Jackets here in 2025. Not going to be easy to get to the playoff, but if they can go 10-2, which I think is very possible on this schedule, especially if the offense is fully operational, man, things get really fun really fast. They've got that early game against Clemson, and depending on who you talk to, there are definitely people that are rooting for not rooting, but picking the Yellow Jackets to pick Clemson off. That's a home game in week 3 of the schedule. The rest of the front half of the schedule is very forgiving. At Wake Forest, Virginia Tech are the other 2 conference opponents you play. The back half is definitely more difficult. At Duke, Syracuse, at NC State, at Boston College, Pitt, and then versus Georgia in the season finale, and that one's played in Atlanta in not the Superdome, but Mercedes-Benz.
Yep.
Yeah. So certainly not an easy schedule, but boy, it feels like this year could be the year for the Jackets.
It does feel like they've been building to this year, and they have a lot of talent on both sides of the ball ready to go. The only thing I'm concerned about is maybe if the rush defense isn't quite as good as it was last year. That was a big high mark last year. But yeah, you look at the schedule. They open at Colorado. That's going to be tricky. Colorado is just a total wild card this year. If those transfers hit, and if there's still some magic in that program, it could be a very difficult opening game on a Friday night, right? Yeah, it's going to be simultaneous. So. Friday night simultaneous with that Baylor Auburn game. That's a tricky opener. You highlighted the front half well. I think at Duke is a really tricky game as well. Sure. It's right before they host Syracuse and go to NC State, and Duke's coming off a bye in that one, so very tricky spot there. But other than that, they host Pitt. Georgia was right there last year. They had every opportunity to win that game and send shockwaves throughout college football. But it's a little bit of a new look Georgia team as well. There's a real good chance that they're 9-3 this year, maybe even 10-2, like you said. And I think I know where you're picking them in regards to the ACC championship. If you're going to pick them to make it to Charlotte, but man, it's going to be really interesting to see if they can actually live up to that ceiling now that there's actual expectations for this program.
I know. And that tends to be the thing that sends teams, running for the under, is the expectations. In this age of social media, when, kids are transferring to programs every other second, it feels like it's hard to build a locker room and a football team that can withstand that, right? It's hard to groom a program that can stare expectations in the face and not blink first. And Georgia Tech just hasn't been there yet, right? This is the first time that they're kind of the trendy pick. And typically on this show, when a team is a trendy pick, we like to raise that red flag. Now, fully, like I said earlier, fully willing to admit that I am not being unbiased. I'm not being fair and balanced here. I am rooting for Georgia Tech to get to Charlotte. I am rooting for Georgia Tech to get to the ACC title game. And so that's just going to be something that I run with this year. I mean, whether they, hell or high water, I'm going to be rooting for the Yellow Jackets here. So there are some questions. They need health. They need a lot of things to go right. But boy, it's fun to root for a head coach that you believe in. And I think Brent Key is one of those guys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He's a guy that I want to root for. He's a guy that I want to see succeed. And it's a program that I think is really fun and is just, it makes the league more fun when they are good and competitive. And I'm really rooting for that this year to throw some wrenches in the big boys and also get some for themselves.
Yeah. Two final teams to preview here on our ACC preview show, the final conference preview show of the season here on the 3 Technique. And we go to the Miami Hurricanes, a team that certainly thinks that college football is more fun when they're better. We can talk about that being true or not, but Miami has been relevant again over these last couple of years. Mario Cristobal has come down. He has certainly raised the floor of what Miami football is capable of these last couple of seasons, right? They had some just absolute stinkers over the last decade. They have never won an ACC championship game. But this year, they're once again right there in the top echelon. Our Jimmies and Joes are picking them second in the conference. They've got a new quarterback in Carson Beck, and they are replacing a whole lot of starters on the offensive side of the ball. So, talk to me about the Canes. Second feels fair to you? Is it too high? Is it too low? Where do you net out on Miami?
I think it's about where I would put them. I could maybe make an argument for a couple other programs. I could make an argument for Georgia Tech. I could make an argument for SMU to be second. But the thing about Miami is it just feels like last year was the year that they were building for, right? Like they went all in on last year. They came up short, didn't make it to the playoff at the end after losing to Syracuse. And that's a really tough thing to bounce back from, right? We saw Mike Norvell right across the other side of the state. They were building for 2023 and they paid off and they went undefeated. And then the fall off was really big the next year, even though we had some portal additions that we highlighted. So I'm not predicting 2-10 for Miami this year. I don't think it's going to be that type of a drastic fall off, but this is a situation that's just really hard to get a read on because in a vacuum, you think about Mario Cristobal, you think about how he's progressed. It was a 5-7 year one, a 7-5 year two, I believe, and then 10-2 in the regular season last year. That's a fine progression, right? That is a perfectly acceptable building block to get to year 3. And then you're starting to think about year 4, but it's just weird that year 3 was expected to be the year. And we kind of even said last year, if they don't do it last year, don't know what to tell you about the future because we knew that this rebuild was coming. As for those players on the field, I've heard a lot of Carson Beck slander this offseason, and I don't buy into that. I think I'm actually buying a pretty nice bounce back year for Carson Beck.
Okay.
I am of the opinion, I've said it many times on this show, that Mike Bobo is not a good offensive coordinator. And I think that Carson Beck was trying to do a little too much in that offense last year. He also had a receiving core that was the worst in college football when it came to drop passes. So that's just naturally going to make you press, and didn't have a run game to fall back on. Just everything that could have gone wrong on that offense was going wrong for Carson Beck last year. And I think he felt that pressure. So I'm expecting a nice bounce back year for him. He's not going to have a ton of known commodities on the offensive side of the ball. Don't think he'll have as good of a run game as Cam Ward got to enjoy with Martinez last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that, they're losing like their top 7 receivers or something ridiculous like that. So it's a lot of rebuilding there as well. But at the same time, it's a new quarterback that's getting to build chemistry with those new receivers. So I think that could actually kind of work to their advantage that they're all coming in at the same time and know that they're going to need to build that chemistry.
Yeah, CJ Daniels comes over from LSU. JoJo Trey, Ray Joseph's a guy that we've heard a lot about over the last couple of seasons. The one that I don't, maybe CJ Daniels guy. We've certainly seen him be very, very productive at Liberty and LSU. So maybe he can back instantly form that connection problem through the air. I think that's likely outcome. How do you feel about the offensive line? They've got 3 starters coming back, a new center in James Brockmeyer, who transfers over from TCU, I believe, and Markai Bell, I believe, is their the listed tackle. Miami had a top 35 rushing attack last year. They were the 3rd best passing offense. Obviously, Cam Ward had everything to do with that, but Carson Beck at times last year looked really ineffective because the offensive line at Georgia struggled. I believe that Miami's offensive line is going to be an upgrade over Georgia's.
I do, mostly because of Mario Cristobal. If there's one position I trust Cristobal to get right, it is the offensive line. Even in some of those down years in the beginning of his tenure, they were still pretty fine on the offensive line. They kind of got it together towards the end of the year, his first year. And then year 2 and 3, they were excellent, like you mentioned. So, I think if there's anything I'm buying in this year and buying as a constant amongst all the change on that side of the ball, it is the offensive line.
Sure. Over the defense, 70th in scoring defense a season ago. That was really frustrating at times, especially, it culminated in that Pop-Tarts Bowl, which, again, buy, sell the relevancy of bowl games and who bought in and who didn't. But to
Especially
me,
if your star only buys in for a half, which was just odd.
Which was objectively odd. But I think that's another sticking point for Miami fans, right? Is at times the defense is really good. And there's obviously 4 and 5-star talent, and they get some nice kids out of the transfer portal. But then there are other times where you look at, like, the Virginia Tech game. Virginia Tech did not have this unstoppable offense. In fact, they really struggled at times last year. And in that weird game that was ultimately decided by a terrible call by the officiating crew, Miami's defense really struggled to get stops when they needed to. They gave up 34 to the Hokies in that game.
Yeah, really good against the run pretty consistently last year, right? But when the pass defense lapsed, it lapsed very badly. You mentioned the Virginia Tech game. The next week against Cal was very similar, the way that Cal was able to chuck it up and down the field. The Duke game had its moments like that. The Syracuse game at the end of the year. Louisville kind of just broke out into a shootout randomly. So, yeah, when the pass defense broke down last year, it really broke down. They were either extremely dominant, stopping both, or the pass defense broke down and just caused the floodgates to burst open. There wasn't really like an in-between last year. As for this year, I think the front seven's still pretty loaded. Yeah. That's a unit that both the defensive line and the linebackers, I'm not really worried about them being able to stop the run and get a solid pass rush again this year. The secondary is where I do still find the concern. I love OJ Federique. He really broke out as a true freshman last year and found a role on this team. They got Kalante Scott from Auburn and Zachariah Porter from Jack State. I think those are really solid finds that could up the game of this secondary, but it is still the biggest concern on that side of the ball for me.
Talk to me about the schedule, because there's some names on this schedule, right? I think maybe the biggest thing for me that stands between Miami and reaching that championship level potential, it's Notre Dame in the opener at home. It's a very talented South Florida team that they get at home. They'll host the in-state rival Gators after destroying them in the Swamp last year. They get Florida State the week after that in Tallahassee. They've got to play Louisville. They've got to go to SMU. They host Syracuse and NC State. And then they'll finish the year at Pitt as well. It's not an easy schedule for Cristobal, and Mario, for all of his perks, certainly has been known to let some of those close games slip away.
There's the potential for things to get really weird. And that's definitely been a problem for Mario Cristobal as well. It all starts with how they handle the Florida gauntlet. I feel like USF, Florida, and Florida State. I'm projecting them to lose to Notre Dame. I don't feel confident in them winning that game right now. I think that Notre Dame's just a little bit above where Miami is right now. But USF, Florida at Florida State, if you can find a way to win 2 of those games, even if it's USF and Florida State, I think that you're feeling pretty good about where things stand, even if you're 3-2 coming out of that. If you go worse than that, if you go 1-2, or heaven forbid 0-3 because USF is just really motivated to come into your house and beat you, we're firing all the alarms, because the second half of the schedule, there's no hot dog at the turn after Florida State, right? Like it's a really difficult and really tricky spot down the stretch. Louisville at SMU, NC State and Syracuse. They're done playing home games on November 15th. And then you got a bunch of Miami, South Florida boys going to Blacksburg, Virginia, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in late November. They went up north last year at the end of the season. It didn't go well. I know that was inside, but still, it's a weird ending to the schedule to not play a home game either of the last 2 weeks. And it just really is a tough back half. So they need to make their hay against the in-state teams to start off.
I think they certainly can. I think I'm with you on Notre Dame. I give the Irish the edge early. But yeah, I mean, lots of potential, I think, to solidify the resume and get into the playoff if you get those wins early and get the momentum going. And then maybe you steamroll through the back half of this schedule, right? I mean, the teams, at least you're getting your biggest games other than SMU, you're getting them at home, which is a nice perk. The road trip to Pitt, I think, is the one that we would say, based on our previews, you'd be most concerned about. But yeah, there's a lot of potential variance, I think, to the Hurricane schedule. And for me, the most telling thing, it's easy to think, oh, are we just hating on Miami? Are we just hating on Cristobal? Because listen, we have not been his biggest fans over the last couple of years. The underbettors have it right now. The over-under is set at 9.5, and the money is coming in on the under, which is where I lean when I look at Miami. I think it's a very solid 9-3 season, but another year where Miami fans feel like they underachieved.
I think 9-3 would be fine if that's where they get. I think, especially with all the transition this year, you're probably pretty confident about what you're building for the future. Just real quick, we mentioned about SMU, how they got they avoided all kind of the middle teams in the conference. That's what makes me so nervous about this Miami schedule, is they have all the wild cards. Yeah. We like Syracuse, but we know that their schedule is going to beat them down. Is Miami the team that they just jump up and beat? NC State has a good quarterback. Virginia Tech, if they put it together on offense, could be really interesting. And we really like Pitt. So they have all those wild card teams, and it's just going to make it a really interesting run down that back half.
All right, well, let's finish it up with the Clemson Tigers, the top team as ranked by the Jimmies and the Joes, and one of my personal picks to be a national championship favorite. This is the year for Dabo. I think this is the year that Clemson returns to the fore, that Cade Klubnik gets to show the country why he maybe is the top quarterback selected in the NFL draft next season. It feels like it's all coming together for Clemson, and they've restocked on a lot of talent. The offense looks like it's going to be extremely, extremely dangerous. I think the running game with maybe a true freshman in Gideon Davidson could be electric. And then the defense is just so overloaded with talent. It's hard to bet against them. It feels like Clemson, to me, is head and shoulders above every other team in the ACC. Fair or foul?
Absolutely fair. And they built the reputation as a program to where we can sit there and look at a 9.5 over under and think, that's probably a little too low. And that's why the over is getting overwhelming action if you're looking at that graphic right now. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, there's no reason that they have the best quarterback in the league. They're going to have the best defense in the league. They're going to have the most talented on paper recruiting classes in the league. And I mean, Dabo's even embracing the portal a little bit and filling some spots now. And that's really scary. That should be really scary for the rest of the ACC, because those places the last few years where you could find holes, maybe it's not having a dominant receiver, maybe it's not having the right safety or the right linebacker, whatever it might be, you can't really find that anymore, because Dabo is now finding ultimate fulfillment and finding the light and seeing that those holes can be filled through the portal.
It's hard to poke holes in this team. They've got 3 returners along the offensive line. That wide receiver core, I think, is finally ready to fully blossom. And I mean, they did a good job last year with a couple of those young young guys that came in, TJ Moore and Bryant Wesco Jr., once they got into the games, man, the passing offense took on another life of its own, and they've got Antonio Williams, who's back as well. Klubnik threw for over 3,600 yards. It really felt like he put that team on his back late in the season. Obviously, was kept them involved in the Texas game. The defense couldn't quite keep up with the speed of the Horns late in that one, but Cade Klubnik had himself a dang season last year, and it even still felt like they underachieved, right? I mean, they won the ACC championship game to earn a playoff spot, and it still felt like, no, this team has more in the tank. And I feel like this is the season where we see the full might of what the Clemson Death Star used to be when they were winning national championships, and perhaps what they could be. You mentioned they turn to the portal. They get a guy like Will Held from Purdue, an edge rusher that was coveted by everybody. They've got maybe the best linebacker duo in the country in Sammy Brown and Wade Woodaz. The secondary is going to be loaded. I mean, it's really fun. It's hard not to salivate looking at this two deep because there just aren't that many questions on this Clemson roster to me.
You're absolutely right. And I think the big question last year, they finally got out of first gear on offense. That was huge to see, and that answered a lot of questions. The big thing that was surprising, I think, to maybe people outside the program was they did struggle stopping the run a little bit last year. 4.7 yards per carry. It was a step down from what we typically see from a Clemson defense, what we've grown accustomed to. But all those guys last year, there was a really young front seven, and all those guys have another year of experience, and they are no longer green. And we fully expect a talented group to take the next step forward. So even that, I'm not really that concerned about going into this year. We can talk about their schedule, and it's hard to really like dive deep into different position groups on Clemson because we can, like you said, like even if it's a flaw or maybe one of the worst units on the team, it's probably going to be top 3 or 4 in the conference when you look at the comparable units on the other teams. So looking at the schedule, they open with LSU, of course. I'm already so excited to watch that game. I'm so thankful that it got picked up to be a night game in the battle of who's the real Death Valley. The only road spots that I'm really interested in are Georgia Tech. That's going to be an interesting trip to Atlanta, at Louisville, and then at South Carolina. But in the way that this playoff is formatted, we saw them lose to South Carolina last year, and it didn't matter. They were still playing for a spot in the playoff the very next week. So not to say that game doesn't matter, because I know the Palmetto Bowl is huge and that bragging rights is massive, and you could potentially knock South Carolina out of the playoff. But if that's the game that I'm circling on the road to worry about, and LSU is the game that I'm circling at home to worry about, neither one of those really matter when it comes to just getting into the playoff. It's kind of just playing for seeding.
Yeah, and I do understand that point of it. I think at least the seeding value is valued more this year now that we got rid of that dumb first round bye for the top 4 conference champions. Now it's just straight seeding across the board. So point taken. And again, that's one of the drawbacks of all of these, the expansion. And gosh, if we might go to 16, there is a point where the big games in the regular season do certainly start to mean a little bit less, unless both teams are on that cutoff point, right? Like unless you have a team that's on the verge of going 10-2 and getting in, or 9-3 and possibly needing somebody else losing control of their destiny to get in.
Well, and no one will treat them as unimportant. Like we as outside observers can say that those, logically you could go 8-0 in the ACC, lose your 2 games against SEC opponents, win the ACC championship, and you're in, of course.
Sure.
But Dabo Swinney's not going to treat it that way. And the coaches on the other side of the ball aren't going to treat it that way. Shane Beamer's going to treat it as a way to knock off South Carolina, even if they're out of the playoff hunt like they were last year. So, all that to say, I think that the schedule sets up really nicely for them. Their toughest conference games, I think, are at home, SMU and Duke. I'm really high on Duke. Georgia Tech's really tough as well, but I think those are going to be the 2 toughest matchup-wise, especially if Clemson can take the next step forward in stopping the run. I think that they can probably get past that Georgia Tech game, but I think rather than breaking down the schedule, I'd love to get your take on, we've now previewed every power conference and every G5 conference. The only like true bona fide playoff contender we haven't talked about to this point is Notre Dame. But when you consider every team that we've talked about so far, I don't think that there's anyone questioning that Clemson can get in the playoff. How far can they go in that playoff, assuming that they set themselves up nicely with seeding and get some built-in advantages with that?
I think the ceiling is national champion. I really truly believe that this team, in my mind, could win a national championship. They check all of the boxes. You've got a veteran coach who controls his team. Check. You've got the best quarterback in the conference, maybe the best quarterback in the country. Check. You're loaded on the lines of scrimmage, offensive and defensive. Check. You're probably going to have a pretty good running game. I mean, we'll see what Gideon Davidson looks like and what, Adam Randall, guys that'll back him up, I think are going to look like. You've got all kinds of talent at the wide receiver position. Your front seven on defense is disgusting. The secondary is really good. There's not a reason that I look at the X's and O's or the Jimmies and the Joes or the two deep and go, yeah, but this is what would hold them back, right? Last year, it felt like that. It felt like the youth, especially on the defense, was the thing that ultimately held them back, and that was what got them beat in Austin. This year, I don't have a reason to doubt them on any of those fronts. Now, maybe the recent track record of losing to SEC teams is concerning. They went 0-3 last year, and it felt like they were outclassed against Georgia. South Carolina just, for whatever reason, seems to have their number right now. And then Texas was just objectively bigger, faster, stronger, and quicker than them. So maybe there's a matchup problem that prevents them from reaching that ceiling. But on paper, I think that this Clemson team is absolutely capable of being the last one standing when it all is said and done.
I'm right there with you. And I think this is a team that is built to make a run, and they have been building towards this season. I've said that several times throughout this preview season, but Clemson has very obviously been building towards the 2025 season, and they've stuck by their guys. When a lot of other coaches would have panicked, maybe tried to find another quarterback in the portal if Cade Klubnik wasn't immediately working out, maybe trying to find, fill a portal class with 20 guys instead of 5 or 6 guys to fill some gaps. Dabo stuck by his guys and knew that 2025 was the year that he had circled on the calendar to be right back in the championship conversation. He was patient, and I think that patience is really going to pay off. We'll see Clemson playing very, very deep into the college football playoff this year.
All right, buddy. There you go. 132 teams previewed. We've got 4 remaining. All of the conferences are finished. And my goodness, if you have joined us on this journey, as so many of you have, I mean, literally hundreds of new Jimmies and Joes. We might be in the thousands by now. There have been so many of you guys flooding in on the podcast side, the YouTube, social media as well. We've been thrilled to have you along for this journey with us, and it just keeps going into the regular season. We do go down to 2 episodes a week once we get to the regular season, but man, the content, the research, the quality, the entertainment, hopefully, that all stays the same. So if you have been rocking with us throughout this entire preseason, thank you so much. We love the support. If you joined along the way, we hope you'll go back and listen to some of those episodes. And, we're not quite done yet. We've got Notre Dame, we've got UConn, Oregon State, and Wazoo to talk about, plus a bunch of fun episodes that will fill up the month of August. We're excited to get to that. We hope you guys are as well. For Trey Reeves, I'm Mitch Mason. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Until next time, so long, everybody.